Hi everyone, I'm Becky Shand and this is Representation Matters, conversations around diversity in the workplace, a podcast series by the Equal Group, bringing stories, insights and learnings around optimising equality, diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Welcome to today's episode where I am joined by Iyanu Onalaja. Iyanu is a commercial property solicitor at national law firm Shoo-smiths LLP. As a bright-eyed young student, she wasn't going to let her wheelchair hold her back. Unfortunately, it didn't. Going straight from a law degree to the legal practice course and a master's in law, followed by a training contract, is a dream for most law students and is one that Iyanu experienced firsthand. It wasn't until starting her training contract, however, that she discovered her career would be slightly more challenging than anticipated. I wanted to catch up with Iyanu to find out more about her journey and what employers working with disabled individuals should be more aware of in order to get the most out of their disabled employees whilst ensuring the right systems of support and adjustments are in place. Hi Iyanu, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, no problem.
Could you tell me a little bit more about your journey so far, how you're finding being a newly qualified solicitor? And congratulations, by the way.
Well, the journey's been quite challenging, I would say, but I'm no longer legally qualified. I'm about 2 years qualified now. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's gone really fast. I think from a very young age, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. And from then on, I've just tried to work as hard as possible to get there. I think whilst I was doing my academics, I just thought it was all academics based. And as long as I got the highest grades, becoming a lawyer wouldn't be a problem. So I was quite fortunate in that sense that throughout my GCSEs, A-levels, and then university, and then even postgraduate, I was able to work hard and get the grades that I needed to be able to open that door. So in that respect, actually getting to a training contract wasn't too bad. It was actually afterwards starting employment, especially as my training contract was my first job, that the challenges started happening.
Right. So during your studies, it was quite straightforward. You were able just to get your head down and do well.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you started the training, that's when things got a little bit more difficult.
Yes.
So could you describe perhaps some of the barriers that you then did face during your training?
Yeah, of course. I think the difference between academic and work is that as a disabled student, I was automatically put through to get all the support I needed. So things like extra time, a personal support assistant. So that's somebody who helps me get around campus, is with me in class to carry my books around and stuff. But when I started my training contract, that all stopped. And I realised my employer wasn't going to tell me how they could help me. I had to be the one to tell them what I needed in order to do my job. And as it's my first job, I didn't feel like I could say that, or if I did say that, then people would look at me differently. So rather than asking for support, I just stayed quiet. So for those 2 years, it's just by the grace of God, I got through it without no support or any aid or assistance.
Wow. So for 2 years, you just sort of got your head down and struggled through without the help you needed.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that must have been really difficult.
It was incredibly difficult. So I'm glad I was at home with my family and had that support that way. And whilst I did have colleagues and, HR was there, I just felt there was only so many times you could ask your colleague to help you make a cup of tea or, carry some books to and from work, or also stay late after work because you had a meeting and then having to travel back home as well. There's only so much you can ask people within your work environment to help you rather than having someone you can call on because that's their job.
I understand what you mean. So you kind of felt like you didn't want to be an inconvenience. You didn't want to ask for too much help. So tell me a little bit more maybe how this was actually affecting your effectiveness at work.
In terms of how it affected me at work, I found that I was making just a lot of mistakes because I was just so exhausted. In terms of my disability, it involves a lot of planning, sort of how I'm going to get to a certain place, how I'm going to carry things from the printer to my desk, who's going to help make a cup of tea, how I'm going to get my lunch, all that kind of stuff. So I was worried so much more about the daily routine of things rather than actually focusing on the job in hand.
I see. And that's actually wasting employers' time as well in terms of you are there as a qualified, intelligent individual who's ready to do your job, but you're having to think about all these extra things which, take away from the time you can be doing your job.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I found was happening. Even simple things for my peers, like making copies or, scanning plans into the system or making plans. It was just really difficult for me because of the height of the printers, the amount of paperwork involved. So it just all got quite convoluted in having to deal with that stuff. So I ended up missing stuff or trying to cut corners when in reality I didn't need to do that if I just had the support in place.
Right. So coming from university to training, it was a bit of a rude awakening in terms of the employer wasn't ready to help in the way that you had received help at university. I guess that transition could have been a lot smoother. What sort of advice would you give to, maybe younger disabled individuals who are also coming into the place of work for the first time?
I think it's a two-way process. I think, number one, when I went from university straight into work, I didn't really know what support I was entitled to. I honestly just thought I'd be able to do it all by myself. And I think that was a bit of naivete on my part. And also my employer at the time, they thought they could handle everything in-house. So there was no need for me to source help from outside. So I think there was a lot of definitely miscommunication from my point. Well, I think from hindsight, there was definitely a lot of miscommunication and not a willingness to be open and talk about actually how I'm going to do this job in practice. But unfortunately, having now gone into my second role, I know that it's a lot more from me speaking and telling the employer what I need that things have actually happened. So I guess it's more for the disabled individual to do something rather than the employers, because disability is so unique to each individual. What I couldn't face within my wheelchair, somebody else who's also wheelchair user might be able to handle no problem.
That's very true. So do you feel that companies are maybe a bit reluctant or hesitant to have the conversations around disability? And if so, why is that?
Yeah, I think employers are definitely hesitant to have that conversation. Number one, there just aren't many disabled people in work. It's just not there. The percentage, I don't even know what the set percentage is, but it can't be higher than 5%. So that's probably something you can look into for me, Becky. But and the way disabled people are portrayed as well in the media and things like that, like benefit scroungers, people who don't do anything or are physically challenged and also mentally challenged as well. I just think the representation isn't there. So when they do come across a disabled person actually in the workplace, they're more concerned about saying the wrong thing rather than, great, we've got the disabled person, they've got this far, that's amazing. What can we do to help them make sure they do their job to the best of their ability?
And, I think it's a shame that companies can feel that way, because at the same time, it is a very serious issue if, an employer is found to not be making, the reasonable adjustments that are needed. And you've heard stories of people bringing claims against their employers to the employment tribunal, and the employers have to be, prepared to then pay compensation and all of this. It's a lot of hassle. What advice would you give to employers about making sure that they are being more proactive about listening to their disabled employees' needs?
I think it's from the get-go. If you're hiring a disabled person or somebody becomes, I think under the Equality Act, there's quite a strict definition of what a disabled employee is. So they might not be disabled when they start work, but they might have an accident or something like that, or an illness that might mean they end up becoming disabled during the course of their employment. So I think for employers, they just have to have that honest and open conversation about what reasonable adjustments they can make for that specific individual. And I think it's just a case of sitting down with them and actually explaining. I remember one time my current employer, I just sat down and spoke to them and said, look, I'm exhausted. I'm really struggling with the hours, is there absolutely anything that we can agree to make it so that I can do flexible hours or work from home more, just so I can do the job properly and efficiently? And they were like, yeah, no problem. Why didn't you come to us before? Blah, blah, blah. We could have definitely sorted something out. So yeah, it's just about having that honest and open culture, I think, and be willing to have that conversation. For me, I definitely want to work and be in employment and be seen. So, for me, it's all about having that conversation, and just being honest with my employers and saying, look, this is, what we need. And also the employers being honest as well. Look, this is what we consider is reasonable and what's not. What do you think? How can we work together? I think it really is a collaborative process.
Yeah, I think you're right there, because you said earlier about how every disabled person's needs are individual. It's not a case of they can have something set out in stone that is just a broad covering for people. They need to sit down with their employers and understand what they actually need, and the best process for making that work. So I guess that conversation, it needs to come from both sides, doesn't it? And some employees, especially if they are new to a company, they might feel a bit nervous to initiate that conversation. What advice would you give to them about that?
Well, in terms of my role, when I finished my training contract, I knew that whatever job I got next, I knew from then on that, look, I was going to have a PA. I was going to have the opportunity to work flexible hours just to ensure me to do my job. So when I was offered this current role, I did say, look, I need a PA to come in with me just to help me do things like carry my laptop, making me a drink, helping me get some lunch, taking me to networking events. I'm going to need a space to park my car down at the bottom of the building. Some days I might want to leave early. Some days I want to work from home. Look, is that something you can deal with? If not, then I'll look elsewhere. So I think, it's about actually being firm in what you need to get the job done. So it's better to do it, I think, at the very start rather than, 12 months down the line. Because I remember when I was doing my training contract, I think when about 6 months in, I was like, gosh, I said to HR, look, I really don't know if I can do this. I'm really struggling. And in more or less words, they said to me that, well, you've been doing it for 6 months so far. We don't really understand what's changed. If you've been doing it for that long, why can't you do it for any longer? So I didn't really feel like I could say anything after that, because I had been doing it, but it just had been taking a toll on me. But because of the person I am, I didn't let it show. So when I was able to actually have that conversation and I was kind of put back in my place, I didn't feel like I could really take it any further. But I knew with this current role, I wasn't going to let that happen. It was either you want me or you don't. So you either want me on these conditions or forget it, I'm going to look elsewhere. So I'd definitely say to other disabled people, if they're unsure about, making those demands, they're perfectly entitled to be. If they've done so well in their academics and their, extracurricular activities, be able to, even interview for such, good jobs, then, there's obviously something special about that person. They should have no worries in saying what they need in order to do the job properly.
Yeah, no, that's really good. You hear a lot about employers getting it wrong, maybe when it comes to equality, diversity and inclusion. However, I know that your current employer has got it right in your case. What are some of the things that, you'd give the ticks to that this current employer is doing well?
They listened to me, and I think that was very important, and they wanted to work with me. They saw my value as an individual, and I think that was really important. I wasn't the token disabled employee. From the work that I'd done already, from being there and from the interview, they were just like, look, clearly you're a really good candidate. You've done really well to get as far as you have in spite of your circumstances. So whatever we can do to help you, just let us know. I remember also before I started the job as well, the HR manager and the building manager actually came along and took me around the office and talked about the opening of doors and the height of desks and the EU knew a lot about access to work as well. And when access to work came round, they came round with me as well. They just made the whole process so comfortable. They didn't make me feel like, I was actually getting anything extra special. It's about making it so that I was level with my peers, so that my disability didn't cause me a disadvantage to do the same job that I'm doing with my peers. So I think, they just had a great understanding of what adjustments I'd potentially need, and they were willing to listen, and they were more encouraged about, is there anything else we can do? Is there anything else? If there is anything else in the future, just let us know.
That sounds fantastic. That sounds like the kind of employer that you want to work for.
Yeah, definitely.
And you mentioned about, it wasn't like any special treatment. It was more creating that equality so that you have the same access as everybody else. And the Equality and Human Rights Commission actually states that the duty to make reasonable adjustments aims to make sure that a disabled person, you have, as far as is reasonable, the same access to everything that is involved in getting and doing a job as a non-disabled person. So they're obviously aware of that.
Yeah.
You also mentioned about access to work. Could you explain a little bit more about what they do and how they've helped you?
Yeah, so Access to Work is basically a government initiative that if you're a disabled person in work, they'll help you cover costs such as employing a personal assistant, costs to do with equipment and things like that. And it's basically just the government's way of creating a level playing field for disabled people in work. I think it was an initiative I think it must be over 10 years now that they've been trying to do something like that to increase the number of disabled people in work so that the society is more representative.
So they actually help to...
For me...
Sorry, go on.
Sorry. No, just for me, they just help with my PA. So I've got a PA who helps me around work, so they pay for that. And also pay for that public liability insurance in terms of my employee, and also things like equipment in the workplace as well.
That's fantastic, because some employers might think, okay, well, we might have to fork out extra costs to provide reasonable adjustments. So this is the kind of thing that Access to Work can help to cover. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I know it might be different arrangements for different people, but for me, that's what they've done.
That's great. So the help is there for the disabled employee and for the employer to be able to get that sorted for them. Fantastic. Moving on to how you're getting on in your current role, have you experienced any form of unconscious or conscious bias in the workplace in response to your disability, or perhaps any misconceptions that you feel people may have about disabled people? People have come from all different backgrounds, and as you mentioned before, sometimes people haven't engaged with different types of people. So I just wanted to know a little bit more about your personal experience with that in mind.
Yeah, of course, that's fine. Honestly, I'd say no. I'd say no. And it's going to sound really, I don't know how it's going to sound, so I'll just say it. But I think for any sort of disabled person to be actually in the workplace, most people know that's a rare thing. So they're going to think this person's done pretty well. So they're just going to approach like a normal person, because obviously it must be a normal person, to be in such a workplace. So I haven't really experienced anything like that. It's more been for me outside of the workplace. So when I was growing up in school, because of my physical disability, I think my parents were told that I would have to attend a special school. There's no way that I was ever going to learn how to read or write or anything like that. But ever since I've been in academics and pushed myself and even been in the workplace, I wouldn't say that I've felt any unconscious bias or anything like that. I've just gone on as myself and tried to be a person or an individual that, is aspired to achieve, no matter in spite of my circumstances. So honestly, no, I haven't.
That's great. And I think that's just so commendable on your part that, you haven't let this disability hold you back. You almost, I guess you probably work harder than some people that haven't got a disability, and, to be where you are, you've done a fantastic job and you deserve to be there just like anybody else. So that's great. So I guess what kind of training or education do you feel perhaps still needs to be done around, catering for disabled people's needs in the workplace? What advice would you give to employers who are keen to tackle this?
I'd say, I think the training needs to come from a disabled person. Somebody who's actually been through it. I think it's all right to talk about what you would do in theory, but I think there needs to be more actually disabled people in equality and diversity groups and actually leading it up, because they know more about it than anybody else, and especially more than a non-disabled person who's just talking about it from an XYZ point of view. But if a disabled person can actually say, look, this is what I've been through in practice, and this is what my employer did, let's talk about a couple of scenarios, I think people will take it to heart more.
Yeah, I agree, because at the end of the day, if it's something that you've actually experienced firsthand, you're better qualified than anybody else to give advice on that. So that's really good. Really good. Okay, and lastly, Iyanu, what do you think the future holds for you? What are your plans for your career? And I guess representing successful working a young woman with a disability who's just going for it.
I think for me at the moment, because I'm about 2 years qualified, approaching 3, I just want to learn my craft at the minute as the best as I can. I've still got so much to learn, and I'm still learning now. So, I think the future's wide open. I enjoy working with the clients that I've got now and the type of work that I'm involved in. So it's just a really great opportunity to just keep on going. But on the side, one of my, I had a mentor when I was hoping to become a solicitor. She was a disabled professional at another firm, Pinsent Masons, and she's doing really well for herself in that she's now set up her own business, and she, as a disabled person, goes up and down the country training professions such as, she trains all sorts of professions, even the train industry as well, about reasonable adjustments for disabled people. It's absolutely fantastic. And out of that, we set up Birmingham Disabled Professionals, which is kind of like a networking group of disabled professionals coming together and sharing their experiences.
So you're part of this group as well?
Yeah, I'm part of this group as well, yeah.
Oh, and this woman's been an inspiration to you?
Yeah, definitely. So we were able to set up this group together. We actually co-founded it, and it's just, I think we launched about 2 years ago now as well. And we just wanted there to be, I think we just wanted an environment for disabled people to come together, who are professionals in their own right, to just share their experiences and encourage one another.
This sounds great, and I think that's needed with every community, isn't it? Because sometimes you just feel you need that support from other people like yourselves who might be working in a similar profession or, a similar level, and just sharing that advice. Can you tell people who might be listening, or maybe some employers that have disabled employees, where they can find out more about this group?
Yeah, sure. If they're interested in Birmingham Disabled Professionals, they can just email me in the first instance. So is it possible for you to give you my work email address after this interview so you can put it with the podcast? Yes,
of course. I can add that to the details of the podcast. Or is there a social media account that people can go and check out?
There is a LinkedIn account, but it is private. So I think if they just send me an email to my work email address, I can arrange for them to be added to the LinkedIn group.
Sure. Well, I'll post your email address in the description of the podcast. So thank you so much.
No problem.
And thanks for taking the time to talk and share your experiences. I'm sure it's been really helpful to those that have listened, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for listening today. Wherever you're tuning in from, we'd love to hear from you. What were your learnings from today's conversation? Is there anything you'd like to add? Let us know using the hashtag TEGpodcasts on Twitter, or you can reach out to us anytime via contact@theequalgroup.com. And in the meantime, head over to our website, theequalgroup.com, for more insights and articles around equality, diversity and inclusion in the workplace, as well as our Beyond Unconscious Bias training and all of our EDI products and services. Why not join our mailing list to be the first to get updates on all the latest EDI news and practical solutions? To stay tuned for more podcast interviews coming up soon, make sure you're following us on Twitter @The Equal Group. Until next time, everyone.